Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool prototype preview for you guys from the brand Raven. Now a little bit about them. They were founded back in 2008. They're headquartered out of the US, and basically they're a micro brand really known for their vintage style homages with modern upgrades, but since have really capitalized on that success by moving towards more original and unique designs, which this particular design is actually a refresh of one of their first few more original side designs. So really excited to be presenting this to you guys today. Now a little bit about this type of watch. Of course, this is a vintage style dive watch. Some key common characteristics in design language: when you're looking for something within that space, within that realm, you're going to want that, of course, modest vintage style size. You're going to want the minimalist dial and a handset layout, really just made for legible timekeeping. You're going to want water resistance through some type of screw down crown, and of course a unidirectional dive time bezel as well. Now, this particular model is the Trekker 39, which is new for 2020, and essentially it's an improved, kind of refined update on the popular Trekker 40, which I own personally, which I will also show you guys for comparison. There are actually quite a few changes that will be, done from the prototype to production, and there's a bunch of those, which we'll definitely touch into once we get a closer look at these. These are actually going to retail for $700 direct from Raven, and then you can actually do kind of a half deposit of $350 down now, and then the other half later on. These are expected to be delivered right around December of 2020, depending on when you watch this. Of course, with the Trekker 39 name, you can imagine this is a 39 millimeter, which is quite a sweet spot, I think, within this type of watch. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a closer look. All right, guys, so as you can see, absolutely gorgeous. Yes, these are production prototypes, so there are going to be some changes made. I'm sure some of you are already looking at that crown and thinking, man, that thing sticks out a little bit more than it should. Yes, that will be addressed. So with that said, what I'm going to do is just hold these beauties up and kind of read you guys off the list of changes, and then if you have any questions or comments, concerns, I'll definitely leave a link to this page on Raven's website, so you guys can just take a look and see in writing with a little bit more specification. Now the matte black enamel is going to be on the stainless steel insert. Here this is more of a glossy black enamel, as you can see, so that will be matte black. The dial logo on the inverted, well, you don't see a gray logo here, but basically it's going to be inverted for the gray and yellow dials. Basically the printed dial lume is going to be thicker, which these are not the printed dial options. These are the applied indice dial options. The printed dial is going to look more like the Gen 1, a lot more like it, which is a 40 millimeter, and as you can see, the proportions, I think, are just massaged and refined in the right way. So actually, why don't I hold this up while I continue to kind of read some of these differences, just to give you guys a little change of scenery. Now the bezel will also be refined to be a little bit looser. It is tight on these prototypes. The case sides will be brushed on essentially on the top half, as you can see here, matching, and then polished on that lower chamfer, which is absolutely gorgeous. On this particular prototype, it's the opposite, and probably to kind of see which one worked better. Was it better to kind of have that separation there and then have a matte undercut, or to have the high polished underneath? I think they went with the right choice there, because I think this looks absolutely outstanding. Now, as far as the bracelet, it's going to be brushed on the sides. Here they are polished. You can see the original model had brushed sides there, so that's going to be brushed as well. You can leave that in frame, why not? The links are going to be thinned out a little bit. As you can see, I do like that they are flat and a little bit more squared off, but they are they're just a hair thick for how thin this case reads, and not how thin it is, but they do the tricks of that undercut, which does make it appear much thinner. So I think a thinner bracelet, of course, course, will be really nice. Now, also, there will be more details on the end link there. You can see here the definition is a bit softer versus what you might expect. Here's a production Raven. You can see very nicely done from that standpoint. So that will be something. Why don't we just leave that in view here, because we'll come back to it. Now, also the bracelet screws will be flush with the side, which right now they're a little bit more inset, as you can see. Also, the bracelet adjustment will be after the fourth link. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here it looks like you're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links. So essentially you'll have less fixed links, which is good. You'll have more adjustability, which is great. Now, the end link fitment will also be refined, which I don't think looks too bad, but you know, it is a production prototype here, so it's pre-production, so there are some refinements to be made that maybe can't be seen by the naked eye, but good on them for, you know, the overall wanting to kind of tighten things up. The grip on the bezel is going to be brushed, which is great because the polish here is a little bit harder to grasp, especially with a stiffer bezel, but you have an example of the beautifully brushed bezel here, nice and matte, and oh yeah, this is still probably one of my favorite micro brand bezel actions, and not just because of the action, it's everything, the sound, the feel of the clicks, and really the tactile feeling of the touch when it comes to how well this coin edge is executed. So I'm sure this will be a similar story once it's ready. So that's really exciting news from that standpoint. Also, the yellow text, as you can see, will be brighter, which that is kind of a bit of a signature on these. There's no yellow, of course, on this kind of white eggshell color there, but on the black there is the yellow highlight. Basically all the dials will be gloss. Here you can see it's gloss. On this one it's more of a matted finish, but you can imagine it gloss and I think it'll look great. Also, all the hands will be polished, and I think in these two examples, yeah, they're all polished hands, nothing painted, so there you go. And then the shield etching on the clasp will be added on. So there's, of course, the Raven shield right here, as you can see. So right now it's kind of an unsigned clasp, as it currently is. And the crown will, of course, be closer to the case. It does stick out a little bit further. Essentially, the crown is going to be more inset, which is great. And as you can see from the previous model, I think they did a nice job of having it a little bit more inset. As you can see here, the kind of the difference there and how much it sticks out. I think this is definitely a lot more manageable, and I'm sure they'll dial it in just perfectly like they typically do, because honestly their watches have done nothing but improve over the years. Now, the diameters on this 39 millimeter diameter, 13 millimeter thickness there, or height, and then you have a 47.5 millimeter lug to lug. Of course, this is full 316L stainless steel. It's brushed and polished. You do have a very nice unidirectional rotating 120 click bezel. It's a little bit stiff on the prototype. I can still do it with gloves on polished coin edge, so that's saying something that you know, this is actually probably the more functional prototypes that I've ever handled. That isn't, you know, basically super pre-production. This is actually a pretty nice rendition of aesthetically what you're going to be getting, so that's really nice. There's not any huge changes. It's really all tweaks and refinements that are just going to improve the overall package when it comes to production. Now, you do have a beautiful box dome sapphire with inner AR coating. As you can see, I think that's lovely. The way it just holds the light there, really well done. And then you do get a nice little bit of play only on the outer edges. Otherwise, it's still quite legible even at those harsher angles. Now, inside you're going to have a Miyota 9015. If you have a date model, there will also be a no date, which will be more similar to the printed dial option here with the Arabic numerals. So there's that essentially, and that one will be using a Miyota 90 S5 for the no date models, but then the date models, which I think are kind of the ones to have in here just because of how well they're executed and just really how handsome they turned out. You know, you're going to have that 9015, which is great. Now you do have the date at 6 o'clock. You have applied indices, glossy dials, polished hands, X1 Superluminova. This prototype is only packing BGW9, only packing BGW9. BGW9 is still great and highly desirable, but X1 is going to be even more potent and long lasting, which is great, and actually will also glow blue. So that's always a nice touch as well. The water resistance on these is 300 meters. We have 20 millimeter lugs that are drilled, which is great. You do have that tapering Jubilee bracelet that goes from 20 millimeters to 16. And then, of course, an all milled clasp. And you might look at this and think, oh man, that doesn't look milled, but it actually is. Take a look at that edge there. That isn't a stamped or formed piece of metal. That is milled out, milled thin, don't get me wrong, but milled out nonetheless. Also, even the fold over there is nicely milled. And then, of course, the scissor clasp, nicely milled. And then you do have some very usable micro adjusts. Holes there for manual setting. So really nice. I think overall, amazing package. And, you know, you're also very covered. You get the screw links. This thing is really fantastic. So as you can see, we have this beautiful white dial model as well, and it is really, really handsome. Now there's two different dial options, one with the applied indices that's going to have this kind of Raven Deep Tech style dial, which is great. And one thing I wanted to show you as kind of the comparable here is my really beautiful Solitude, and you can see there with the stainless steel bezel insert. The nice thing is this one actually has the 12-hour option, so I have it set to East Coast time as well as my local time in the West Coast. But just an idea of what the finished product, look at that beveling, the contouring, the brushing, really well done. Look at that bezel. The action is amazing, by the way. It's just so, ooh. Of course, this is a dive bezel, unfortunately, and you know, it's not some crazy 24 or 72 click or anything like that, but it does the job, and I'm able to track a secondary time zone there, and it is finished to a very, very high quality. And I gotta say, I like the way this one turned out. It's just a really handsome piece, great proportions, great, you know, execution on there. And this is a modern Raven. And this will be an even more modern one, as you can see. And I think, you know, comparable to the steel, it does give you a little bit of an idea of how these are going to read in hand, kind of in the metal or the flesh. Now, here, this is obviously an older Raven, being the since discontinued but now soon to be brought back to life Trekker model. Here's the 40 versus the 39. If those, you know, if some of you have the other model, you can get a closer look. It is not much of a refinement in size, but it is quite a refinement in proportion. When you look at those dial to bezel ratios there, and then of course when you look at the side slab case versus the contoured case, it makes a huge difference. Everything is just more refined. Look at that end link for the Jubilee. It's just more refined. You get the female style end link, so it's going to hang much nicer, versus here it hangs out a little bit, which doesn't bother me because I have a larger wrist. But hey, it's not a big deal, but it's a deal, as Nick Shabazz would say. But these are really nicely compared. I think quite handsome. Obviously, you can basically get this this style and size and bracelet option with this similar look here with the numerals in the newer model, and it'll be a no date option. So those will be available to you for those of you that prefer this aesthetic, which is a bit, I think, a little bit more tool-ish and a bit more kind of mid-century, where this just feels more, it gives you a little bit of a luxury vibe. I dig it. It has you know, it has the applied aspect, it has the glossy aspects, really nice. And then of course, one thing that is also improved is you're getting a ceramic bezel insert, which is really great and looks fantastic, ties in really well with that glossy dial. So with all that said, let's actually go ahead and get these pieces on. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing just wears like an absolute dream. With a little bit more arm in there, you can get some proportions. Of course, when you get up close, it's going to look a little bit larger. It's going to play larger due to some lens distortion there. But when you get a little bit more distance on it, you can get an idea of how this is going to render. Really, you know, hopefully a better idea versus just a floating talking wrist, and understanding that on a person, it's definitely going to be a little bit nicer and not quite as large and bulbous as it might seem during a very basic wrist shot. Now, this thing wears fantastic. Look at those contours. Look at the way it rides on the wrist. It lays. Look at those proportions. You got that beautiful bezel. You got that beautiful box dome sapphire. You get that mid case with that nice undercut, just taking away, slashing at that visual weight there, making it appear so much thinner, and then also helping it be quite mobile on the wrist. Look at the brushing, the contouring, the shape, just the high quality that is screaming from this bracelet really beautifully. As you can see, also we do have it on this wrist. Boom, also very nice. For those of you that scream to see what the watches look like on your other wrist, I am a lefty, so I do typically wear my watches on my right wrist. But today you get a bonus because I have 2 watches to review, so you'll see it on this wrist as well. I think this color this colorway gives you a nice casual look. And the nice thing is if you go with, like, let's say the black bezel with the white dial, it gives it a real modern vibe, which I dig. But I think in this you know, format, it's a little bit less diver and more just everyday sports, which I can enjoy. I think it gives it a little bit more versatility for those of you that aren't necessarily looking for that black and steel diver look, which, man, does this really check the boxes for. Really very nice from that standpoint. But let's go ahead, set up some low light transition and loom shots. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, the BGW9 is doing quite well and really well applied, but it will be that beautiful updated X1 for the future. But one thing I like to do during my reviews is get into some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of the field, out in direct sunlight, which my hot studio lights do a very nice job of simulating. But most of the time you're going to be coming in and out of a building, in and out of a vehicle, walking underneath an overhang. So your watch is going to live in less than optimal lighting. Sometimes they'll even get into some harsh lighting like you're going to see here. Very high contrast. Look at the way that the light plays off of the brushing on those links, the brushing on that bezel insert, and you can actually see how well done, even at a prototype level, the finishing is. So really nice uniform brushing from that standpoint. The light is telling a bit more of a story here, and then you can see the glossiness, what to expect from that aspect when you see the light play overhead here. So very, very nice, quite handsome, even in that transitional lighting. Still very, very legible. You do have that instant 12 o'clock orientation, which is quite good. Now, some kind of closing thoughts, guys. On wrist, you have extremely classic proportions that fit almost any situation. These can be quite formal and dressy, but at the same time quite sporty. These are just really that sweet spot for everyday timepiece. And honestly, although the vintage big crown market is so flooded, there's a reason why people dig that aesthetic. It's coming back. Hey, I mean, think about my SBDC 101 from Seiko. Even the mainstream brands, everybody is getting in on that kind of mid-century diver look, and why not, right? And I think the nice thing is here you get something from Raven that is on the more original side. Yes, it's taking styling cues from different places, but it's doing it in a way that isn't referencing a single singular design or reference. It's really taking things that they like from here and there and piece them together. And honestly, geez, when you think about brands, they've really built their whole career on that. Think about Christopher Ward and the mishmash that the Trident C60 started out as, right? With all those mixed elements from everything from Bremont to Rolex GMT Master to the Omega Seamaster. So there was so many different elements that played together and created their own kind of iconic look that they've refined over time. And I think that's the nice thing that I'm seeing from Raven now. They're in a bit of that transition where they're taking these iconic elements, kind of mashing them together and slowly refining and peeling layers away to create their very own aesthetic. And their aesthetic is a very cool one at that. So I think the nice thing is that they have a theme, they have a brand aesthetic that is very clear. You see a Raven watch, it looks like a Raven watch, and this one honestly looks probably like one of the more premium Raven watches I've ever seen. So again, guys, as far as model variations go, in typical Raven fashion, there's going to be 4 dial options, 2 bezel options, which out of those you'll be able to create 8 different Trekker models. As far as comparable models go, again, guys, the market is pretty full of them, but this is a real nice one at $700 from an American-based brand who's passionate about watches and really enthusiast run. The bottom line is this is finally executed, thoughtfully designed, and extremely solid value. Now, is it some bang per buck king, AliExpress special? No, it's not. It's not trying to be that. Is it some super high-end, aspirational luxury piece? No, it's not trying to be that either. What they are doing, though, is creating a very attainable, very nice watch that people can appreciate from the fact of if they're a watch guy, a watch geek, a watch gal, you can enjoy this watch, or if you're just somebody who can appreciate premium gear, if you're into knives. That actually, quick shout out, Finch Knives. They even do knives, guys. So that's the Raven way on that outdoor tip. Here, let's even see if I can get it to focus. There we go. So look, they do it all, guys, and they do it well. This is even loomed there. Maybe I should have brought that in for the loom shot. But a little shout out to Finch Knives, Finch Raven, birds. Come on. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you haven't, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.